Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Write or Die Show. I'm your host, Randi-lee. On the show, we interview other writers and we talk about mental health from their personal journeys. If you have not already hit that like and subscribe button, go ahead, do that now so that you never miss an episode.
Hi, everybody. So every time I see that beginning, I'm always like, oh, I miss those glasses. But you know what else I've noticed is my background has got more, it's got more shelves in it and more stuff than before. I'm angled a little bit different than I was way back when. I don't know, just the things you notice in life, right? Anyway, welcome to this week's episode, this beautiful snowy Wednesday here. Hopefully you guys don't have gross weather where you're at. But let's welcome John Graham to the show. Hello, how are you?
Randy, I'm very glad to be here on this very cold morning in Texas.
Oh, cold morning in Texas. Psh.
It went down to 27 degrees this morning. I froze my derriere right off.
Wait, hold on. What is 27? Because I know Celsius. So hold on. I gotta figure this out. 27.
It's below freezing. How's that sound?
-2. Oh, I mean, okay, it's cold for you. We are -10 plus wind chill, making it like -25. So
I'm assuming you're in Canada.
I am.
You speak the language well. Very good.
Oh, I thank you so much. I try hard. I'm the most southern part of Canada, though, so I like to say I'm from the south. And then my husband hates when I say I'm from the south. He's like, you're not from the south, because whenever you think of that, you think of like the American south. But I'm like, but we are the Canadian south.
Well, actually, if things go as planned, you'll be the northern part of the U.S.
Yeah, we're not going to go there. We'll see how that all plays out.
Yeah, this is not a political broadcast, but it does deal with mental health.
It does. It's crazy times out there in the world. Crazy times. So other than living in Texas and having amazing pictures behind you, so those who are listening on the podcast, you are missing out on these really beautiful pictures that are behind John, some seriously beautiful scenery. So go on YouTube, hit subscribe, and you can see it. Anyways, John, tell us who you are.
I'm sorry?
Tell us a little bit about who you are.
Oh, I'm in Texas where I do my writing. It's from my actual work is in Ohio. Good Samaritan Home is the nonprofit that I founded. And what I do is I come back to Texas because to me, it's a second chance state. Historically, it's always been that way. Everybody came here for 300 years to start over. And I came here in the 1980s to start my construction business over. And then I came back 10 years ago to write my novel.
Wow.
Because the attitude here is if you're willing to work hard, then you can get another chance. And that to me, that embodies my philosophy because I've started over so many times. I estimate about 8 career changes. So I'm very good at starting over.
Excellent. I think that career changes is a very common theme in people's lives, especially as of late. When I was an employment counselor, I can't remember what the stat was, because this was going a little bit back. See, look at my career change. I used to be an employment counselor. But I used to tell people, the average, I want to say the average times people career change back then when I was giving the stat, I want to say it was like 4 or 5 times career-wise, not jobs, like straight up career changes. So I think it's increased over the last bit since I last knew the stat way back when. But yeah, I think it's a common theme nowadays.
Yeah, when we're young, we think that we can always do better. And many times we can. But here's one thing I've learned, because I deal heavily now with the state government in my work, because I partner with the Department of Correction in helping people re-enter after prison. We have a rehabilitation program. And what I found is that there are many, many gifted people in government who just hard workers. They go to work at 8 o'clock, they work till 5 or 6, they do their job. And contrary to some of the current statements, they're not living large on taxpayer dimes. They're just working their asses off.
Yeah.
Without any credit.
Yeah. And I mean, because I think there's a lot of people that we don't hear about, right? The people that we hear about are the ones that are just living it up. I'm assuming. I don't know. I'm making stuff up.
No, in general, but my experience has been that's true.
Okay, there you go. See, I'm not making
Yeah.
stuff up. Look at me go.
Yeah.
But that's just it. Normally, if you're just working hard, putting your head down, doing your thing, you don't want all that publicity because you want to just do your thing.
Well, what is the essence of government? Basically, it's to keep the streetlights working, to keep the water running. It's to make sure that if you have an emergency, a fireman shows up. That's the essence of government. It's only dramatic when they do this movie special, but most of having been a fireman, most of it is cleaning the fire trucks and preparing.
Wait, you've been a fireman
Oh yeah, yeah.
as one of those careers? Oh, that's
Well, let's put it
interesting.
this way. I was a door-to-door salesman. I was a truck driver. I was a fireman. I was a building contractor. I was a substitute school teacher. I was a children's home counselor. I was a minister and a journalist. Over 30 years of all these changes and taking my family through it. And to be quite candid, they were not necessarily good moves, but sometimes you think they're good and your family pays the price.
Yes.
So I was 53 when I finally found my niche, and that's the essence of my story. Is that some of us take longer because we're coming in with a limp. We may not be able to walk as fast, but we're still trying. It just takes us longer.
Yes. So let's talk about that a little bit more because that's the essence of this show, right? Like sometimes I think when guests ask to come on the show, they get really hung up on the diagnosis side of things. And it's not to say that I don't appreciate that because I love having an array of topics to talk about when it comes to the mental health field. And so this is one of those topics is that just because you may not have a DSM-5 diagnosable mental illness does not mean that you don't struggle with different mental things throughout life, like finding what you're going to do for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
That's a very difficult thing to do. So take us back a ways. What? Because you mentioned it. You kind of came in with a limp. What does that mean? How did you develop this limp?
I use an example from my novel. Daniel Robinson is the main character, and it's not an autobiography, but obviously it roots in experience. And Daniel grew up in a home with a mentally depressed mother, an abusive father, and he and his brothers just withdrew. And Daniel says at one point, "We lived in the same house, we ate at the same table, we had the same last name, but we were strangers. We all lived alone together." And that, I believe, sums up many, many people because, particularly in this electronic age, when you can pick up your phone and disappear, it's very easy to isolate yourself mentally without moving off your chair. And the trouble is, without family support and guidance, you end up drifting, as I did. So I can't say that I had a mental illness. What I would say is I had a limp, a mental limp. I didn't have the ability to run as fast as what I called normal people. In fact, I couldn't even see the starting line. And they went off to college. They did great, well with grades. They got these great jobs and big houses. And by 30, they were successful. And by 30, I was still trying to define who I was or where I was. And I think I'm normal compared to most people. We just don't talk about it. It's not a diagnosable issue. It's just a limp.
I like that distinction. We have our diagnosables, and then we have the limp. I like that that terminology because it's visual. And as a writer, visual is kind of important.
Yeah.
Using your words to help visualize things, so very important. And as you're talking, a couple things came to mind because I know a couple people that similar. They're like, yeah, okay, me and my sister grew up in the same house, but if you heard them talk about their upbringing, you wouldn't think they lived in the same house. Two completely different lives were there. So it is a common feature of life now, which is kind of scary. that you're like, no, that never happened. And it's like, no, but it did happen, because you're living two different lives in the same home, in the same kitchen. Right. And then the other thing is, there was some saying, and I'm going to butcher it because I can't remember it exactly, but something about when there's all these people around you, but you're just still feeling alone.
Yeah.
And that is one of the worst feelings, is you're still alone. You're feeling whatever it is. For me, when I feel that way, it's like I feel different. I feel like I don't fit in, and I just feel alone, even though I'm in a crowd of people. Even if it's, because a crowd makes it sound like they're strangers. Even in a grouping of people that I know, I can still feel completely alone. And I think that we don't talk about that specific incident enough.
I would say that's extremely common today in particular. It may have been common in the 50s and 60s when I grew up, but we would go out and ride our bikes all over and such, and we would be out. The idea was, when the sun's up, you're up.
Oh no, we froze. So I'm going to give a minute. Hopefully this is not going to be the way that the rest of the show goes, because we're having such a good conversation, everybody. But John is frozen, or am I frozen and I'm talking to no one? Who knows?
I lost you there.
There we go. You're back.
Okay.
So I heard, when the sun's up, you're up, and then you froze.
Yeah, because you were always out with your friends. But what's happened now with the electronic age is that television started, of course. We started pulling in and watching TV. I remember growing up, I could tell you every show on every channel. There only were 3 channels. But I could tell you every one, because I watched so much TV. And you can become Leave It to Beaver. You can become Ron Howard on Mayberry, because you get into that world that looks happier than yours. Because your old man comes in and he's yelling and screaming. So why not watch Mayberry? Now, what you do is you take your phone and you watch reels from Facebook. And what I'm finding, I'm 76. I get frustrated watching those reels, because it's always about some bully picking on some smaller person. And the only way they can defend themselves is somehow through superhuman strength, or at least a karate skill that no 7th grader has. And the idea is that you're alone, and if you don't fight back, the world is angry. It's going to abuse you. And I feel frustrated. How much more so would a 12-year-old kid watching a steady stream of those? And the end result is that you go deep into that world of isolation if you're not careful.
Yeah. That's a good point, because what you see and what you constantly take in can become what you think is reality, when in actuality it's not at all.
Not at all. Not at all. But if that's all you know, it's like right now, I could say it's terrible winter. It's 27 degrees here. And tomorrow it might be 55 degrees, and then it might be 70 on Saturday.
Yes.
See, reality changes if we get past today.
Yes, exactly. Oh, I like the way you put that. Okay, so as you're talking, you're having these isolation kind of things. How did you, as you're getting older, and you talked about, your friends had went off to college and in their 30s, and they're being successful. How were you feeling at that time? What number career were you on?
Oh, it depends. Yeah, I suppose if I'd stayed a fireman, I could have had a decent career, because at that point I did have a college degree. I just didn't know, I didn't really learn anything. I studied psychology thinking it would help me, and all it did was reinforce what I knew was wrong with me.
That's what happened to me too.
The problem was that I wasn't welcomed as a fireman, because I was the first one with a degree. So they felt that I was somehow a threat. This was in the old school fire department. And so they viewed me as separate. And so I responded as separate. And after a couple of years, I quit because I wasn't welcomed, I thought. And so, But I tell you what I did, Randy, is that in college, I started writing in my journal. I just wrote, not Dear Diary stuff, but feelings. And I created what I call creative loneliness. And I was able to, over the years, develop 4,000 pages of just notes, not for me, not for anybody, but for just to express. Because if you go to a therapist, they may take 2 weeks to see you, and they don't know you like you know you. And but in the meantime, what do you do if you're feeling all this angst, all this depression, all this intense emotion? Well, I wrote it out.
Yeah.
And I got it out of my system. And then when I could go to my counselor, my mentor, I had taken the emotion out of it and I could look at it objectively. And the truth is, it's the cheapest therapy I ever had, and it worked the best.
I like that. Yeah, because we do need things that we can do on our own. I'm a big proponent of therapy. I love it. It helped me immensely. But she did have to help me take the emotion out before we could get to problem solving of certain things. Because if I'm in emotionally heightened state, I am not thinking straight and I am not able to see what's right in front of me because I'm only feeling the emotional side. So I think it's nice that you can kind of combine the two if needed.
Absolutely. And see, I would never say that talk therapy is not helpful. It's just that it's one of the tools in your toolbox. That's all it is.
Exactly. You got lots of tools. You got your hammer, you got your screwdriver. Oh no, those are the only two. Oh, a leveler. I don't use too many tools. Sorry.
Now, I will tell you this. That my days as a building contractor, we had
a building contractor too.
Oh yeah. Sorry about that.
I love it.
I had a philosophy: if something doesn't fit, this is what carpenters say: get a bigger hammer, and that's fine. But I went from there to being a minister, and I tried that in politics, and a bigger hammer doesn't work in churches. So that's why I'm not a minister today.
You needed a different tool, not a bigger hammer, a completely different tool.
Yeah, unfortunately, you can't come in with a hammer. You have to come in with a kid glove, and I just never owned one of those things.
But I'm loving the analogy of, I mean, I've used toolbox before, lots of people have, but I've never actually thought, hammer, what could the hammer be? And then what could the screwdriver be? And I'm kind of thinking about that stuff now because I'm, like I said, very visual person. So now I'm like going, okay, so my screwdriver kind of looks like a pen. So that would be for my journaling. The hammer, because I feel like I hit myself on the head all the time. That's my therapist trying to tell me something that's not getting through in my brain.
Well, let me share a secret with you, Randy. When we started Good Samaritan Home, basically it's a shelter targeting men and women coming from prison. We offer temporary housing in partnership with the Department of Corrections. So it's as a legal nonprofit, we were offering a service, and it saves community money, but also protects the community because you're offering intervention. Here's the problem. The community did not like the idea of it. And so the community riled up, went to the city council, passed petitions. The city council passed ordinances. There were mass protests. There were threats. I had police protection at one point, and we ended up suing the city 3 different times over 7 years. That's the hammer we're talking about. I had to use a hammer, not of violence, but of nonviolent resistance. Mm-hmm. What we did in the middle of the lawsuit, we bought another damn house just to prove to us that we were not moving. That's a hammer. That's what Dr. King would say, nonviolent resistance. And I think, number one, I never felt so healthy and things were never so clear as when I was doing something that I believed in wholeheartedly in the midst of all that pushback, because I knew I was on the right track. I just knew it for the first time in my life.
Okay, so let's talk about that for a second. How did you get from, I don't know what the heck I'm going to do or what my purpose is, to this is exactly what I'm supposed to be doing? I'm assuming there's something that connects the two moments in your life.
Mostly it's failure and homeless or near homeless. I was 53. I had tried my stint as a small church minister. I had gotten my master's degree thinking that I wanted to fit in. I had been 35 years after the protest of the 60s before I entered the voting booth. So I tried to fit in at 53, and I was fired from my church for not being a good minister. And they're probably right. So we were facing homelessness because we had a church house. I had no income. So my wife and I said, I have construction background. Let's find an old house. Let's fix it up and let's help people who are struggling as much as we are. Let's give back from our own need and help somebody who needs us more. And that's how we started Good Samaritan Home.
I love that.
Out of that came the contract to offer reentry housing to men and women. And that's our funding stream, a contract. Mm-hmm. So it worked out well for us, but it was a tough row. It was tough.
I feel like that finding purpose in failure is a common thread in people who are like they consider themselves successful. And I say it that way because I feel like success is a very personal bar. Everyone is different on what they deem as successful. And being happy to me is my successful bar because I was depressed for so long. So if I just stay at the level of happy, I'm hitting my successful bar. Maybe one day that'll change. We'll see. But that's where my bar is at right now. And so a lot of these stories that you hear when people are talking about being successful or on other podcasts where people are sharing their stories, they find their purpose through some type of failure or desperation or, that pick you up from the bootstraps kind of moment. So even though, like you said, you were facing homelessness and you got fired, and they might have been right. I like that you can admit that you found purpose. And there's a book, Finding Purpose in Your Pain. I read this book. I don't know who wrote this book, but I don't know. It was a good book. Anyways, when you find a purpose in your pain and you're able to create something that wasn't there before, I didn't exist before, you create it and you're passionate about it, to me, that is such a huge successful person because you're doing something that you care about.
And what we've found, though, is that 80% of our residents coming to us from prison are dealing with either mental health or addiction issues. And the common thread through all of it, is family dysfunction growing up again and again and again. And I can identify with that in my residents. So I don't look at them as ex-cons. I don't look at them as dangerous persons. In fact, I rarely ever talk about what they've done. I look at them as me, unchecked, without restraint. I could have been there with them.
Yes, exactly. And I think that's another really good thing. And you said that you got your degree in psychology, right?
Yes.
And it was like, hey, I'm just making stuff up again. Hey, I'm going to do this because I want to fit in. I want to get a degree. And I don't know, psychology sounds like a great idea. I don't know what I'm going to do with it because I'm a firefighter. But look at how having that background, having that schooling at least, maybe unintentionally, but has probably helped you in this Good Samaritan Home by, yes, okay, you've had life experience that connects, which I find is the best connector and best way to support people is when you connect on a real life level. But you also have an educational background on top of your experience. So I feel like everything, even though it didn't seem to make sense before, everything sort of led you to that moment of let's give back and let's buy a house and let's just do it. Because you said it, I have a construction background, so let's go do all of those things that didn't make sense before, that didn't fill your cup, as the saying goes. it all makes sense now because you needed all that experience to get to where you are now.
Actually, you raise a very good point, because every one of those, I call them detours, every one of those detours contributed to the formation and development of Good Samaritan Home. Door-to-door sales, school teacher, fireman dealing with crises. That's what a fireman does.
Yes.
A building contractor, journalist, because I had to learn to write and promote. The very fact I'm on these podcasts right now talking about second chances is a journalistic expression. And so all those detours are not really detours if we learn from them and use them. I agree. Absolutely.
So, and I think that is one of the best messages that can come out of our conversation. We've had a lot of good points, but I feel like that's one of the best messages because it's such a common theme in people's lives is the detours that they take. And then we go, oh, I just wasted all this money on an education I'm not using. That might be me that said that. But ultimately, I am using that education, not in the way that I thought I was going to when I went to school, but I am. So it's kind of interesting that you can do all of these detours. I'm loving that word that you use you can use all of these different detours, and it leads you to a place of, I'm going to go back to our other word, to successful, personal, successful moments. I like this.
What I've concluded, Randy, is that we are taught that life is a sprint. We're taught that you run fast and succeed, and you bask in your glory and just live comfortably, looking at your smiling, beautiful children the rest of your life. And they look at you as a hero figure. And then we realize that life is filled with potholes, and we've fallen down, and we didn't reach that goal. And some of us, like me, had struggles to even find the starting point. I concluded that life is not a sprint, but a marathon. And we walk and run as best we can. We don't run against the other person. We just keep running. And me, I limped along. And now, to be quite candid, many of my friends in college are just watching The View on TV and vegetating. And I'm looking at my third and fourth novel.
Yeah.
So it's don't stop running. No matter how slow you are, keep running. It's a marathon.
I love that. And I also love that you said you're not running against other people, because that's another big pitfall that we fall into, is looking at somebody else. Oh, but my friend or my cousin or my whoever, well, look at what they're doing. No, good for them. I mean, look at what they're doing. Good for them. That's awesome for their life. Doesn't mean that you're in the same place.
Absolutely. It's like golf. You're not playing against somebody else. You're playing against your own score.
Right. And sometimes if you play golf like me, you have this little gopher that follows you around, just throws the ball closer to the hole. That's like having your tools in your toolbox, because sometimes I need a therapist to throw the ball closer there. I need my journal, and I can throw my golf ball closer there. Yeah. If you ever don't play golf with me if you want to play correctly, because
I don't play golf because the odds are stacked that I'll hit it somewhere in the woods in the next fairway.
Exactly. So then the gopher comes along and he just throws it back on the fairway of the one you're on. It's great.
Yeah, I struggle with the clown on the clown in the windmill on the seventh green.
Yeah,
that's the kind of golf I do.
I like that kind of golf too. I think I'm a little bit better at that kind of golf. But sometimes a gopher might still show up there and nudge my ball along. But that's sometimes what we need in life. Sometimes we need a little bit of help, and that help, maybe we're limping along and we need a little bit of help. But I love it. Don't stay where you're at. Keep going forward in whatever capacity going forward is for you.
Absolutely. That's in fact, when I finished my novel a year ago, it was exhausting to be done. And now, of course, publishing it, and I hesitated to start the sequel. But just 2 weeks ago, I sat down, pulled out my notes, and started writing, because the energy that's created with doing something new, even though it's a monumental task, the energy that's created. And now I get up every hour on the hour, and I'll put notes in my phone very quickly because I got ideas. And my mind's been racing for 2 weeks, just dealing with ideas. And once you take that leap of faith and say, I'm going to try something new, I'm not going to look at how scary it is. I'm going to look at the fact that it's new and it's an adventure. And the worst that can happen is it won't work. So what?
So you take another detour, whatever.
That's right. That's right. And I always say I've been thrown out of better bars than this one.
Oh, I like that. I like that. So I always like to end this part with a question that I pose based on our conversation. So your question would be, what is your piece of wisdom to somebody who just detoured on their life in a direction that other people are going, what the heck are you doing?
Yeah. I think the simplest way to answer that, just come back to that statement, that detour is simply one part of your marathon. Just get up and keep walking or running or limping as best you can. Keep moving, because how many of us watch our children when they swing at the ball and miss, and they start getting mad at themselves and say, I'm so dumb, I'm no good. And we do that in our heads. Our kids do it with a baseball. But we have to say, that was a detour. That was a learning experience. I'm going to do it better next time. It may not be right, but it'll be better.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Okay, so what is it that you want to share with everybody? I mean, we've kind of already shared a little bit about Good Samaritan Home, and you've mentioned this book. What is it called?
Actually, I didn't write the book for money. There's no money in publishing books.
No, there really isn't, but it's fun.
Oh no, the numbers are frightening. The average across the board, major publishing houses sell less than 250 books and 1,000 books over the lifetime of that. So the books don't make money. It's John Grisham or Kristen Hanna that makes money. And we all think we can do that. So I wrote a book to simply get these feelings out. And it took me 10 years to write that. And I wrote it and wrote it and wrote it, 24 editions before I got it right. And the idea, it's called Running as Fast as I Can. And it's the concept is that some of us are running as fast as we can. We just can't catch up. And it deals with family structure abuse. It deals with sexual abuse. It deals with homelessness. It deals with the 60s. Think of it like Forrest Gump going through all his traumas. And Daniel was at Kent State. Daniel was at Haight-Ashbury. He was at the Detroit riots. He was going through all of that, learning and dealing with that. And in the end, it's a love story, but a love lost, love found story. And it's one of those feel good. In fact, it's gotten 30 awards. And,
oh, wow.
Oh, no, it's done extremely well. We sold 12,000 copies just this year, which to me is phenomenal, just phenomenal. But Randy, what I'm most impressed with is the reader feedback. They'll say, I felt Daniel. I am Daniel. I lived Daniel's journey.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing my journey, they say. And it's extremely readable book. In fact, to tell you the truth, I still get emotional when I reread it because it's that personal. It's not my story, but it certainly is built on my experience. Mm-hmm. And truth is that I think if you want, here, I'll give you an example. We could talk all day long about mental health.
Yes.
And think of it like we're going on a cruise and we're going to talk about lifeboat safety. So when we talk about lifeboat safety, nobody listens. So what we're going to show is the Titanic movie with Jack and Rose. And so suddenly everybody is concerned about lifeboat safety. That's Running as Fast as I Can. It's an emotional, intense love story that conveys this idea of emotional abuse and healing. It's about forgiveness in a story form. And what I'm hearing is people can't stop reading. They just keep turning pages and turning pages. So
Awesome.
I'm very, very pleased. And you and I are talking about it today, not the book. We're talking about the issues in the book.
Yeah.
That's what matters. You know, if somebody buys the book, I don't care, but I do care that they read it and wrestle with it and have a discussion internally and externally about forgiveness and healing.
Love all that. So when people do want to read this book and have these conversations, where do they get it?
Very, very simple. Easiest thing is just go to johndavidgraham.com. That's my website. It'll link you to Amazon. It'll link you to all my social media. I love to have discussions and short discussions on TikTok and Instagram, but long discussions on, I have a post on Substack, but we talk about moral issues. We talk about personal issues. We talk about sometimes politics, but from a moral perspective, not a partisan perspective. But check out the book. You can even download several free chapters from the website.
There you go. You get your little snippet and go, oh, now I need to read it. This is
I guarantee you once you start. It's Audible, it's print, it's ebook.
Audible, love me Audible.
It's also on Kindle Unlimited right now. So
there you go, guys.
Yeah,
you can go get it.
It's worth every dime you won't have to spend.
Love that. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing with us.
Oh, listen, it's early in the morning here, and you got me a bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. Thank you.
Yay! Love hearing that. And I always say Texas is one of the places I want to visit. So maybe one day it will happen. We shall see.
Go to West Texas, out into the Chisos Mountains. You go 100 miles between towns. You may have an entire county that covers the size of Connecticut, and there may be 5,000 people living there.
Wow! So it's like going up north.
Yes,
spread out.
It's like going up north, but with a lot of sunshine.
Yes, going up north in the summer.
When I was climbing the mountains on the border, and you got to be careful because the sun is so hot that I dehydrated and ended up in the hospital.
Oof, so, okay. Lots of water. Got it.
Lots of water. And also don't pick up anything till you kick it because it might be a rattler.
I don't know if I want to do that. Yeah. Reasons I don't want to go. I'm going to not think about those things.
Y'all come down now here.
Yes. We'll go over yonder there. So again, thank you so much for being on the show and sharing and just keeping it lighthearted. I think it's an important thing to do too.
I try not to take myself too seriously, but I do take my subjects seriously.
Yes, me too.
Yeah.
As always, thank you so much for the amazing guests that we have on the show. Be sure to check out their links down in the description below. If you want to support the channel, go ahead and check out our merch store. We've got some very cool things on there. That's my favorite. Sorry, I'm busy ending the stigma. But there's some other very cool designs. 10% of the proceeds always goes back to the Canadian Mental Health Association. Be sure to follow us on Facebook at RB Media because we have some great new shows coming up and you never want to miss any of those episodes. And remember, the only way to end the stigma of mental health is to speak openly and honestly. Bye.